Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is January 15th, and right now we are looking at the mid-level water vapor loop. You can see the ridge dominating the west coast of North America. It's going to eventually allow for some Arctic air to drop down in towards the Pacific Northwest, but a lot of that's going to stay east of the Rocky Mountains. However, we will get some cool outflow, and we should even get some sunny days out of it here as we get some gusty easterly winds here stirring things up a bit, but there are going to be some chilly overnight lows. And then we'll take a look at the extended forecast to see what is coming down line. Models continue to hint at some possible Arctic air trying to get down again into the Pacific Northwest, but maybe a little bit better chances for some lower elevation snowfall. It's kind of a fantasy forecast, but you've probably been hearing some rumblings about it on some of the social media sites out there. So taking a look, first things first, a visible satellite imagery. Let me update that, make sure we got the most recent stuff going on. You can see, you go across the higher terrain, Mount Rainier, St. Helens, Adams, Mount Hood, Oregon Cascades, some of the Blue Mountains out there. You got some nice sunshine. Even the Washington, Oregon coast, again, very sunny this morning. But look at this grime and this muck just set up in the Willamette Valley, Western Washington. I am ready for this stuff to break up. Yesterday I was hoping for a little bit of some sunshine to peek through at times, but it just did not. And you can see a lot of that up against the east slopes of the Cascades. You can see it carved out into the valley areas here as well. This is probably the I-90 corridor, and you can see up towards Wenatchee. And this is the Okanagan River Valley here as well. This is a cold air conduit from the interior portion of British Columbia. We can get some strong north winds when Arctic air does make its way down into our region through this area, as well as the Fraser River Valley that you can kind of see right there, which is actually quite clear right now. So if you go up towards Bellingham, you're kind of right on the fringe of some of the lower clouds there. But yeah, again, across the higher terrain, nice and sunny, hoping for a little bit of a breakout today across some of the Seattle metro. You can also see some of the nice snow-covered mountains there across some of the Rocky Mountains of Idaho and Montana. Some high clouds moving over at the top of that as well. Now, taking a look here, you can see that this is my page here. And if you click on this, you see that it says, and 3 more links. You can see where it links you to my Twitter or X, there's my Blue Sky, and there's the Pacific Northwest store. So if you click on that right there, you can go to my shop. And if you scroll down, you can see Discover Design. So if you want any one of these designs, you can put it on a hat or t-shirt, or my favorite, I always wear these things, the sweatshirt. So you can kind of see that right there. Yeah, some of these designs are quite fun. And the clothes are really nice. I really like the moisture wicking t-shirts as well. That's all my son wears lately. And I wear these sweatshirts all the time. The men's sweatshirt and the women's sweatshirt are really quite nice. You can get stickers for this as well. Now, taking a look here, what is coming up? So Spokane, again, this is from a couple days ago, but still applies. We are going into some cold air here this weekend, the coldest weather of the season so far. That's not saying too much. It's been pretty mild this winter. But looking off towards portions of Idaho and Montana, you can see pretty chilly temperatures coming in here. This goes through Saturday, through Tuesday, January 18th through 21st. And some of the overnight lows, like when we go into Monday morning, are going to be pretty downright bitter cold, especially east of the Rocky Mountains. And also some strong winds in advance of that Arctic front moving down. Look at some of the Rocky Mountain front, southwest wind gusts up to 100 miles per hour, East Glacier. West wind gust to 80, Cascade up to 65 miles per hour, southwest wind gust. You can see the highways affected, Interstate 15 as well. So watch out for that if you're traveling eastbound out of eastern Washington into Idaho and in towards Montana. And look at some of these bitter cold temperatures. These are not wind chills, folks. So look at Helen. It might drop down towards the negative 18. These are overnight lows, but still very cold out there. So prepare now for these chilly temperatures. Look at West Yellowstone, negative 24. And you can see some of the impacts here as well. And, it doesn't take much. If you get a couple inches of snow when it's blowing around, it can be quite daunting. And so, when you get into some of the higher elevations there in Lodge Grass, you can see Sheridan 1 to 2. Some of that can be blowing around across some of the roadways. So take caution with that. Now, taking a wider look at the Pacific Northwest here, let's take a look at the European. I waited for this one to get most recent information. So you can see this very weak frontal system moving through western Washington, barely any precipitation at all. Maybe a little bit of snow for the Cascades as that pushes through, and it even shows a little bit of freezing rain trapped at the surface. I don't know about that, but anyway, it's not going to amount to much. And then you can see this is that Arctic air mass sagging south as we go through the day Friday, pushing down across Wyoming, Colorado. All the way down to New Mexico and into Texas is going to get a taste of this Arctic air, it looks like, and the potential for quite an extreme event down there. Look at this freezing rain all the way down towards the Texas and Mexico border, even out towards towards the Gulf Coast there. So yeah, you can see the Arctic air that we're missing out on here in the Pacific Northwest is at least headed down across portions east of the Rocky Mountains. But not all is lost, because we have some stuff that's going to showing up in the extended forecast. You can see here we do get some cooler air coming down across British Columbia. This would definitely bring lower snow levels, so we'd have to watch this. And this is just on in through next week. You know, we're not looking too far out in the forecast. We're still at 200 hours plus, but at least it's showing up in some of the shorter range forecasts here. And again, not a lot of precipitation associated with that. And then we scroll off into the extended even more and look at some of this Arctic air getting a bit further west across British Columbia here. So this would mean much cooler weather here for the region, but still not a lot of precipitation associated with that. But a long way to go for that forecast, and a lot can change on that. This setup could, trend a little bit more impressive, or of course it could move off to the east. We'll just have to wait and see as we go, but we'll take a look at some of the models on that here in a moment. Now look at the National Blended Models, daily 2-meter temperatures. So take it. Look here, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, 30 for Seattle. Look at 20s, mid-20s for the Willamette Valley. So a fairly hard freeze coming in here for some areas. And you can see eastern Washington, Oregon, some places really dropping off. And then, of course, we talked about that across Montana as well. Western Montana getting down below zero for some of the overnight lows, some of the higher terrain of Idaho, eastern Idaho as well. So even some of the valley areas getting very cold. And look at this, Monday morning, Seattle, 28. Some of the outlying areas could be down towards 20 degrees. Again, Willamette Valley, very cold. We go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We start to slowly warm it up a little bit there for the overnight lows. And the max temperatures are not doing too hot there also. You can see these lows kind of trapped into the low and mid 40s for Seattle. Probably the warm spot across Pacific Northwest as you get down towards the southwest Oregon coast. There are some 50s showing up there as we move through next week. Now, take a look at precipitable water, and this is why you might want to get your chapstick ready as we start to bring some of these dry conditions as we go through the weekend. Look at this, just Arctic air. It's very dry, very dry. It's what's one of the defining characteristics of an Arctic air mass. And when we get some of these east winds going as we go on in through later this weekend and towards Monday, it's going to be chapstick time here. So be prepared for that as we go on in towards next week. Now, taking a look here, in fact, let me do one thing. I'm going to back up here, and I also do want to show you the winds. I think I left that out, so we're going to look at upper air winds. We're going to go to just off the surface at 2,500 millibars, and you'll see some of the outflow here occurring as we go through Saturday morning, for example, Fraser River Valley. In fact, let me back that up a little bit more. A little bit of outflow there starts on the day Friday down the Okanagan River gap here. Again, kind of a cold air conduit to the interior of British Columbia. And then you can see as we go on into the day Saturday, outflow through the Fraser River Valley, a little bit through the Stampede Gap, the gorge there. It's a sea elevation gap between western Oregon and eastern Washington, right along the Oregon-Washington border. So the winds can get quite strong there. But you see as we go on through Sunday, look at these winds out of the east really picking up. So it's going to be dry, probably sunny as well, but very chilly in the morning hours. And then we'll take a look at what's going to happen after that here, starting actually right now. So European hot off the presses on the left, we're looking at 5,000 feet, 850 millibars versus the GFS hot off the presses on the right. So this is North American. You can see Alaska is right there. There's Washington State. California is down here. So we put this into motion. There's going to be the strong winds across Montana coming up there in advance of that Arctic air. Then look at that Arctic air mass. Mainly, again, staying east of the Rocky Mountains. Both models are in good agreement there, but some of that does leak out into eastern portions. You can see the European a little bit colder aloft just off the surface there at 5,000 feet, and that's going to push, some of those easterly winds. And so we should get a couple dry, sunny days out of this very crisp, cool weather. And then we scroll off into the future a little bit more, and the European wants to bring a little bit more Arctic air here, kind of trying to take a shot at the Pacific Northwest, but there's not a lot of it here. That doesn't look like a great lower elevation snowfall event, but then you can see it really wants to bunch things up across some of British Columbia. Right now, this one would be kind of an intrusion on the drier side, although it probably would kick off, definitely would kick off more precipitation potential here than the last one that stayed mainly east of the Rockies. So some of this tries to get out a bit more, but again, we're looking way far out into the forecast. And as we scroll even further out, the GFS starts to have some Arctic air getting down at the end of its run as well. But the European has us flirting with Arctic air here as we go through the end of the month of January. So if we look at the artificial intelligence European, there goes our Arctic air that we've been talking about for days now. And then we look off in towards the 240 hour period, some Arctic air around, but that doesn't Doesn't look like an impressive lower elevation snowfall event west of the Cascades, anything like that. But then you can see it does want to throw another round of Arctic air somewhere at us. But again, I don't know if the trajectory is perfect at that one, but it's so far out right now. Things can change dramatically in that time frame. So if we take a look at the extended forecast on the European weeklies, you'll see that we have this ridging we're dealing with and the Arctic air trying to make a pass here as we go through the end of the month. But then things really start to back up, and it looks like La Nina starts to take over as we go through early February. Classic ridging here across the Aleutian Islands and out across some of the Pacific Ocean, allowing for that troughing here along the west coast of North America. So that is a decent signal looking off into the extended forecast as far as maybe some wintry weather or some active weather back into the Pacific Northwest. Maybe another La Nina February coming up here. So February has been a good month for winter lovers here in the lower elevations over the last 5+ years now. Now taking a look at the same thing here, but this is the control run. And as I scroll on again towards the end of January, kind of trying to clip us here with some Arctic air and then some interesting stuff showing up as we go on into the early portion of February, potentially multiple rounds of it. You believe the European Weekly. This would definitely be much more active and fun weather with some snowfall potential even into the lowlands if something like that were to eventually come to. But again, long ways out. So here's the current 6 to 10 day through January 24th. Again, we talked about that in detail. And again, not much precipitation though as we go through January 24th. There's the 8 to 14 day, and again below normal here across some of the west. But we'll see how that trends as we go towards the end of the month and see how that Arctic air wants to, see how much of that wants to get into Western Canada. But yeah, anyway, we'll continue to watch that extended forecast here. And again, if you're traveling eastbound, watch out for that Arctic air coming down. I look forward to maybe clearing out a bit here as we go through next week. I'm getting tired of these lower elevation clouds just kind of hanging around for these gray and dreary days. And no doubt a lot of us are. We're not even getting any rainfall out of it. I mean, January is usually a pretty typical rainy month. So we're probably going to end January below average here across a big portion of the Pacific Northwest. But again, February still got that nice look to it, but it is so far away that you don't want to get too caught up in those details just yet. So anyway, we'll continue to break things down day by day. We'll be looking at the extended forecast, watching it like fantasy hawks, and what else? Hope you guys are having a good day otherwise, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.